Alright, so welcome to DealSignal. So this is a full demo script that I'm going to present for the DealSignal project. Deal teams today don't struggle to find information, they struggle to act on it. There's an overwhelming amount of public data like press releases, interviews, funding announcements, partnerships, etc. But the real problem is too much scattered information and there isn't enough clarity on what actually matters. So what happens? Either team misses on important signals or they drown in these noisy alerts. DealSignal solves that. It watches a curated set of companies, detects meaningful strategic changes, scores them, and surfaces a short, prioritized list of companies worth acting on right now. And the key idea is we're not trying to detect mentions, but rather we're trying to detect movement. So this is the homepage of the application. Everything starts here. It's intentionally curated in layers and not just a feed of alerts. So on the top, we have this priority now section, which is the action layer. These are the signals that are most recent, show meaningful changes, and have high lead scores. We'll get into the scores later. So this is where a deal team should immediately come on the UI and focus on immediately. And importantly, this priority is not permanent. It can change later based on how data changes in the backend. If everything is priority, nothing is. So we enforce few restrictions on how we calculate this. That is, these need to be very recent, say last 7 days, needs to have high score, and the cap per company is also considered. On the next layer, we have top opportunities this week, and this is more of a ranking layer. If say priority is act now, this is more of a review first. It shows the best opportunities from the last 7 days based on scoring. And later we have all the other signals, and which we call it as signal history. Here we have multiple filters for the users to, trim down the signals, trim down a specific company, and add certain thresholds or even filter based on dates. So this is basically the content. We still show broader signals, but they don't clutter decision making. So the UI answers what changed, what matters, and what I should look at first. So let's see how the scoring works. Key question is, how does the system decide what matters? There are two layers of scoring. We have signal score, open this. We have signal score and we have lead score. So signal score determines raw event quality. This measures how strong the event itself is. It uses confidence, strength, and recency. So basically it's asking, is this event credible and timely? And then we have lead score, which is for the business prioritization. This is the real decision layer. It answers, if I only have time for a few companies, which one matters the most? It looks at multiple metrics, few of them being change significance. Did something actually change recently? Signal strength, how explicit is this intent? Recency, is this actionable now? Reinforcement, are multiple sources saying the same thing? Thesis fit, does it matter to us? Source quality, how trustworthy is this? So the simple way to summarize the lead score is the system is compressing a lot of scattered information into a smarter first pass for humans. So on the UI, let's say we have this signal for ServiceNow, which is partnering with Finserv, which is a strategic partnership. Also, by the way, I should mention how we have these different signals captured and also different strategies that are captured as well. So if I go into a particular signal, this is a strategic partnership. It gives a summary, it gives the evidence, and it gives you a bunch of scores for the user to be trained upon and decide if this is a worthy signal to pursue. The next key differentiator for this UI is something known as the narrative delta. This is actually the most important idea in this project. For each company, the system builds a baseline narrative. For each company, the system builds a baseline narrative. Basically understanding where they operate from, what they focus on, and who they work with. Then for every new signal, it asks what changed. That change, that narrative delta, is what drives alerts. So instead of keyword matching, we're rather doing change detection on a day-to-day basis. More on that later. So for example, in this, the reason this was given a very high score was there was an alert worthy change detected, as in a new vertical was detected, as in more of a retail space, and the theme was detected entering into the AI space and the resilience one. And also a new company, Finserv, apparently. You can see other signals as well. Global, AI-driven CRM, new counterparty, Panasonic Avionics Corporation. So as you can see, the benefits of this is instead of a user or an analyst going out in the internet and looking for all these details by themselves, DealSignal gives you one standoff portal where you can find all the information in one single place, and based on all the companies that you have, ranking, priority, different scores, you can be on the go as to which company to target or which signal to target first. There's also a dashboard for, say, a user wants to understand for a specific company. I can go into the company dashboard and see, say, Datadog, how is it doing? This is where explainability comes in. You can see what happened, the actual evidence, the signal type, and why it was scored highly. So this is not exactly a black box. Users can understand why something surfaced and also decide whether to act or not. So example, in the Datadog, we have all the signals on the left, and on the right, it also shows you a summary of what's the latest narrative, what the geographies are, verticals, what are the themes detected, etc. And on the bottom, you also have different recent changes that it detected, that are these alerts and these recorded changes. Alerts are more highly scored and have a certain threshold. That's the reason it's classified as alert. So that's from the UI perspective. On the admin page, we have a few stats of what's going on. So this is essentially the operational layer. It shows the pipeline runs, the counts, the system health, etc. So this is an optional page just for my developer experience. So everything you saw in the UI is powered by a nightly pipeline. This runs as an Azure container job behind the scenes every night. Every night, it loads the watch list, that is all the companies that we have, discovers relevant articles using TinyFish. I'll get more on that later. It fetches the raw text, uses Azure OpenAI to extract structured signals, deduplicate events. We don't want multiple events on the page. Detects narrative changes, scores opportunities, and writes back everything to a storage so that the UI can use it. So what is TinyFish? So TinyFish here is how we discover high quality signals. Instead of relying on static APIs or basic scraping, we use TinyFish, which is an agent-based browser automation tool. What that means is it can actually navigate the web like a human, run targeted search, open pages, extract relevant content dynamically. So rather than passively ingesting feeds, the system goes out actively every night and finds out interviews, announcements, strategy discussions, and high signal articles. This can be expanded more later. Simply, we can think about TinyFish acts like a research analyst that browses the internet for you at scale and on a schedule. This is important because this is where the analyst's job is being automated. Instead of them going and sourcing all these articles by themselves, an agent is doing for them overnight and on a daily basis and storing it somewhere with no noise. The key points, the UI is the presentation layer, the pipeline, the Azure Container Job is the engine, and TinyFish is what gives the engine the eyes to search on the web. All right, so let's probably look at the architecture. Since there are two layers involved, one is the nightly pipeline that runs and one is the UI layer. So this is the pipeline layer, which is the intelligence generation. It runs a nightly ACA job, uses a Docker image plus a managed identity to authenticate into Azure, and pulls secret securely at runtime. The flow is we have TinyFish that does the discovery. It fetches raw text, it archives. Azure OpenAI is used to extract structured information out of it. We deduplicate, generate narrative deltas, scoring, and output into a persistent database. This architecture can be more in-depth, be guided on my GitHub as well. And the next we have is the UI. So where a user comes to the browser, it's hosted, the DealSignal UI that I just showed is hosted on a FastAPI server. It fetches the data from the Azure Blob Storage where we store from the nightly pipeline, and we have all these different pages that is persisted in a SQLite database. All right, so what does this actually give us? Okay, so what does this actually give us? So we have, as you can see, less manual research. Most of the manual research is, deducted by this nightly pipeline that does the research for you. There's better timing for outreach. The analyst can now focus more time on chasing signals rather than finding signals. There's stronger prioritization. You have these multiple scores which can be tweaked accordingly, and there is a stronger prioritization on which signals needs to be led, and this can be communicated to all the analysts. And there is also a reduced alert fatigue. And importantly, this is just the MVP. Right now it uses public signals. The next step is connecting a CRM and a relationship data. So instead of just this company is interesting, we get this company is interesting and we have a way in. To close, this demo of DealSignal shows how we move from passive monitoring to active sourcing intelligence, where the system doesn't just show information, it helps decide where to act. That's it. Thank you.